Let me tell you what we're gonna do today. We are looking at some new Genex support cards for that just got released in the OCG, which had Twitter exploding a little bit this morning. I think people were kind of excited about these, but I haven't read them yet, so let us do that. And then we're gonna pivot into some nice little Master Duel and tournament preparation after. But more about that in a second. First, let's just look at the Genex cards that we have received, which I don't know how many there are even. Arms of Genex Return 0, which is a level 10 Dark Machine Synchro, which is fairly generic because all it requires is a Dark Tuner. So you could make this in other decks, like Dragon Link, for example, comes to mind. Locked into Darks can still make this guy. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish one monster from your grave with the same attribute as that monster, but a different one than those banished. To activate this effect of this card's name this turn, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that monster. Once per turn, you can target up to 6 of your Genex monsters with different attributes that are banished or in your grave, shuffle them into the deck, then you can destroy up that many cards in the spell and trap zone. It's funny because this is like it works the exact same. It works similar to Axis Code, right? But it's not. It doesn't just pop cards on your turn. It's monster negates. So when your opponent activates a Dark Monsters effect, you can banish a Dark Monster to negate the effect and destroy the monster. But you cannot do that again for a Dark, right? If you can have a couple different attributes for the right matchups, this card can negate multiple cards. But if your opponent doesn't play a deck with the same attributes as your deck, then this card basically does nothing. Right? Which is an interesting concept. I think that's a kind of cool way to make a negate monster, no? Like it's definite, even though it can hypothetically work multiple times with the right setup. Most of the time, this card is worse than it's definitely worse than an Omni Negate, I think. Even though it has the potential to come up multiple times, it is definitely worse than an Omni Negate because it only negates monsters, and it only works if your opponent plays the same attributes. Where's the once per turn? Dude, if this had a once per turn on it, it would completely it would defeat the purpose. Once per turn on this card defeats the purpose. It's not meant to be a once per turn. So does a different one refer to the attribute? It refers to the attribute. It refers to the attribute, like you can negate one dark with this, one light, one earth, one wind, one fire, one water, and technically, I guess, one divine. 7 potential negates is wild though. I mean, the thing is, to set up, before calling a card broken because it doesn't say once per turn, chat. Okay, just 5 seconds to think about it, all right? Just 5. In order for you to get multiple negates out of this card, you need to set up multiple attributes in your own graveyard, and your opponent needs to be playing the same kind of attributes, right? Not if you set up 7 different attributes in your graveyard, that doesn't mean you can negate 7 cards with this, because your opponent is not going to play 7 different attributes in their own deck. Like 99% of the time, decks have one attribute, maybe some more, but like for majority of decks only have 1 or 2 attributes. It's like it's not that impressive from that standpoint, right? Tell that to Vanquish Soul. Well, yeah, this card in theory would be very good against Vanquish Soul, but only if your deck can set up like an Earth, a Fire, and a Dark in the graveyard. You know? You know what's gonna... People are freaking out right now, but let me tell you what... This card is... It's a good card. It's a good card, but let me tell you what this is going to be used for. 99% of the time. 99% of the time, you're going to negate only darks with this in matchups that have a lot of dark monsters. That's what's going to happen, because it requires a dark tuner, so you're guaranteed to have a dark monster, and dark is also the most common attribute in the game at like in meta decks or across different meta decks, so on and so forth. Dark is the most common one. That's why Protoss Call Dark was so good, for example. You're just going to make this with a dark in the graveyard. You're going to negate a dark monster, and if you have any other, like a light monster or like you have an ash in the graveyard or whatever, you have the potential to sometimes negate more cards, but most of the time it's not going to happen, right? Most of the time it's just going to be here to negate darks, and sometimes have like a little bonus to it, right? That's what's going to happen. That alone makes it an interesting option. However, you have to ask yourself, when would I ever make this over Baron de Fleur, which is an Omni negate, right? Baron de Fleur can negate everything, not just cards with the same attribute. So one scenario could be something like Dragon Link being locked into darks with Rocket Tracer. I could see myself making this, right? In a Dragon Link deck, you know, this pattern, then this, and then you have 2 potential negates for a matchup that has dark monsters. It's all right. It's not terrible. It's a card that is not bad, and but it's not as good as people make it out to be. Like, you guys are evaluating this card as its highest possible potential, which is not realistic at all, right? You're not going to be able to consistently set up a bunch of different attributes, and then at the same time, even if you can set up multiple attributes, your opponent is probably not going to play all those attributes, so you can't use all those negates anyways, right? And so I actually like this kind of design because it gets you thinking, right? It gets you thinking. It's not as simple as slap a Baron de Fleur onto the field and just negate whatever. This requires some setup and some thought, and it's not good in every single matchup, so it's not as broken, and it's not going to be part of every single end board going first, right? And so I think it's an interesting card. It's a strong card in mirror matches. Generally that is true. It's a strong card in mirror matches, if you can summon it, of course. Not every mirror match has a dark tuner available. Like, for example, you are saying Sword Soul versus Sword Soul. Sword Soul does not really have access to a dark tuner. It's not as simple as that, right? So, if you play a mirror match, your opponent is very likely to be playing the same attributes as you do, right? And so then, in that case, it can become very strong. But interesting card design, honestly. Interesting card design. Yeah, I kind of dig it. Also, a potential other way to have like have an out to Nibiru in a deck like Dragon Link. If you can get a light monster into the graveyard, even if you lock yourself with Tracer, you can still summon a negate for Nibiru, for example, which is interesting. Repair Genex control Link 1. Oh, we love the Link 1s. Okay. Materials 1 level 4 or lower Genex monster. All right. Let's hope this one's not good, even though I am afraid. You can only special summon Repair Genex controller once per turn. If this card is Link summoned, you can add a Genex monster from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, it does very good effect, of course. Goes +1 on summon right away. Doesn't add from your deck though, so whatever you add back has probably already been used. Once per chain, if a Genex monster is added to your hand, except by drawing it, you can immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a Genex monster. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, except by synchro summon using a Genex tuner as material. It's a harsh law. It is a very, very harsh restriction. It's a very harsh restriction, but I want to drive your guys' attention to the words once per chain. This basically means whenever you add a Genex monster to your hand, you can just normal summon it. Right? Whenever you manage to normal summon you add a Genex to your hand, you get to normal summon it. Right? You can do something as simple as wait, is Genex Undyne once per turn? For Genex Undyne. Surely it's not once per turn. It is not once per turn. Okay, so as an example, and I honestly, there's probably already better combos out there, but just my first train of thought is you normal summon Genex Undyne. You send any water from deck to the graveyard, which you can do some stupid stuff with that for sure. You know, you normal summon Genex Undyne, you send a water from deck to grave, add a Genex controller from deck to hand, you link away the Genex Undyne into the controller. The controller adds back the Genex Undyne from your grave, which triggers its second effect immediately because it doesn't specify added from deck to hand or whatever. You add back Undyne, then you immediately activate controller to normal summon the Undyne. You go Undyne effect, send another water from your deck to the graveyard, add a controller from your deck to your hand, and then you can activate this again to normal summon the controller as well. Which, all things aside, like there's probably even better possibilities with this. But one Genex Undyne with this would make it so you get to resolve Genex Undyne twice. So you send 2 waters for cost. And you have a Genex Undyne, a Genex controller, and this on the board, and another controller in hand. Right? Of course, one big downside of that is that you would have to play Genex controller in your deck. But like, I mean, you can do some crazy stuff with that. You can do some crazy stuff with that. Honestly, this restriction is a very interesting one because it doesn't lock you out of any specific. It locks you into synchros only, but it doesn't lock you into Genex monsters, right? It doesn't lock you into Genex monsters. You can still summon Baron, all those kind of things, as long as you use a Genex tuner as material, right? So in that sense, it's less restrictive as locking you into Genex monsters. I mean, I'm not looking forward to playing Genex controller in my decks again. That's gonna suck to draw. However, this card is pretty good. Now, whether one extra deck card makes a Genex deck broken, let's set that aside. I don't want to speculate about that because we get this card way like months down the line, right? Let's not speculate whether this is going to make Genex broken or not. I'm sure there's already 1,000 different replays out there of some one card combo that does whatever. I just want to say, and I keep saying this whenever people get super hyped about a specific one card combo or a specific new combos coming out. That's not really a specialty. It's not really a specialty in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! For a deck to be able to do some crazy stuff in theory. Like, the question is, will it be able to perform in practice, like in actual games, when your opponent actually has a thing or two to say to your stuff, right? And generally, the concept of giving a very old archetype one super busted extra deck monster has, I want to say, typically not worked out super well because it just gives the deck a really, really obvious choke point, right? Like, if I stop the Repair Genex controller, none of those combos are probably gonna work, right? So I don't know, right? I don't know, but it's definitely a good card. I'm not saying it's not a good card. It's definitely a good card. But I don't know if Genex combo is gonna be the new end all be all, you know. But you know, real Genex Undyne. Wait, what was the Genex Undyne is now real? Okay, poggers. The other one was just a dream. Okay, level 4 water aqua effect monster. Once per turn, you can banish a Genex monster from your grave This card gains that monster's attribute. Then, if you banish a tuner, you can treat it as a tuner until the end of this turn. Okay, this card can become a tuner. That's good. If you control a Genex Synchro monster, you can target 2 Genex monsters in your grave, including this card, add them to your hand. Also, banish any card sent to your grave for the rest of this turn. Okay. It's an interesting card. It has synergy with what we just talked about, right? You could send this could be one of the cards that you send with Genex Undyne, right? To the grave with the other Genex Undyne, the not real one. You send it for Genex Undyne, and then later on you can add 2 Genexes from your grave back to your hand, which then again triggers your Genex, the repair Genex controller, but you can only summon one of those. You cannot summon both. You can only summon one if you add 2 back with this. Of course, this is a rather harsh restriction. This is a rather harsh restriction for most Yu-Gi-Oh decks. I don't know if Genex is completely immune to this, but that is a hefty drawback, right? It's a hefty drawback. Unless Genex has great synergies with this, but I'm not sure. Tiger, thank you for the prime. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. So yeah, but it's an interesting card. This one's interesting. It's not obviously as broken as the other ones, but it's got an interesting effect. You need to one major drawback for this card is that you need to control a Genex Synchro monster. So what I just said about this card not locking you into just Genex Synchros, right? You can summon some actual good stuff Synchros. If you want to use this thing, you have to make a Genex Synchro, which of course, I don't remember every single Genex Synchro out there from back in the day, but I don't remember many of them being powerful. Like, most of the time, you would rather make not a Genex Synchro, right? So, that's a drawback for sure. We just got a good one? Well, yeah, but like, this is... it's a level 10. Once you get to level 10, you can use this as further extender, but I don't know. The new level 10 shuffles back banished. Well, yeah, okay, going second. That's the thing. I kind of ignored this second effect of the level 10 synchro because I'm gonna be honest with you. It's super duper hard to summon this going second, probably, right? But this is technically like, and also it only destroys spell and traps, right? Like what? Most of the time, it's not true every single time in Yu-Gi-Oh, but most of the time, if your opponent has spell and trap cards in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, those are going to prevent you from making the level 10 synchro, right? And so it's like, it's kind of like, while an effect like this might read well, might read nicely, it's like usually not going to get much value. The pop is optional. The pop is optional, but you also don't get that much from just shuffle. That's not a crazy effect to shuffle back cards into your deck. That's not crazy. Like, why is that important? Usually it's not. Like, yeah, okay, you're not going to run out of resources. It's a nice bonus for Genex decks. It's a nice bonus, but it's not really, you know. You can pop your own cards. You can pop your own cards. However, I don't think Genex has any synergy with that. So all of the things you guys are bringing up right now are true, right? You don't have to pop with this card. And you can pop your own cards. But both of those things, I find it hard for those things to really matter in the grand scheme of things. Right? Okay. Real Genex Turing. Level 2 Dark Spellcaster Tuner Effect Monster. You can only use the first effect of this card's name once per turn. During your opponent's main phase, if you control a Genex monster, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon a Genex Synchro. Okay. A Genex Synchro monster. Oh, I thought it was going to be a... Okay. Now this honestly begs the question of... what other good Genex Synchros are there that I can summon on my opponent's turn? That I'm not sure about. Locomotion R Genex. Is Locomotion the one that takes control? Locomotion R Genex. When this card is synchro summoned, take control of the face-up monster your opponent controls with the highest level. Okay. I mean, I guess, right? I guess. It's also permanent. It's not until the end of the turn, so you just take your opponent's highest level monster. That is one interesting thing. It cannot miss timing, no. Because it's not optional. It cannot miss timing. That is not correct. If this card on the field is used as synchro material for a Genex monster, it can be treated as a level 1 or 3. Okay. This card is a Cupid pitch target. Always need to note that, you know, maybe Genex Genex is already a synchro strategy. Maybe there's a Cupid pitch situation going on with Genex then. Who knows? But I mean, it's not a bad card. This is not a bad card. It's not an insane card or anything like that either. Like, it doesn't give you any extension on the first turn. It basically is a vanilla on your own turn, really. For the most part, it's just another vanilla tuner for Genexes that has it can be used as kind of a hand trap. Kind of a hand trap. I don't know. It just seems like, to me, it seems like these cards, uninterrupted, these cards can probably set up some pretty insane stuff, and someone has already sent me a replay. However, I feel like I'm getting vibes from if this thing gets negated, you're probably not doing anything, right? But okay, I'll give you one replay. One replay we'll look at, and then we stop the cope. All right, so we get a Genex Power Planter. When this card is normal summoned, add a level 3 Genex effect monster from your deck to your hand. Okay, we're gonna add Genex Ally Birdman. All right. We're going to go with this, and we're gonna... not once per turn. Not once per turn. Okay, we're gonna add it from the grave, normal summon it again. Add a level 3 Genex effect from your hand. We add Magma. We normal summon Magma. When this card is normal summoned, you can add a level 2 Gen... Okay, I did not know they had a billion Stratoses that are all not once per turn. When this card is normal summoned, you can add... What? Stop! When this card is normal summoned, you can add a level... Hey! If this card is added, you can special summon this card. Okay, this escalated quickly. Why did they make this? Once again, I just want to draw your guys' attention to one thing. If this thing gets impermed, your deck is like 3,000 Stratoses that don't do anything. That's all I'm saying. Right? So uninterrupted, when your opponent has 0 cards in hand, 0 cards on the field, 0 cards in the graveyard, 0 cards in their extra deck, and 0 cards in their deck, it's gonna look crazy. But if this thing gets negated, curtains. Okay? Curtains. Alright, we're gonna do the new Genex dude, which in this case is actually quite powerful because we have... you know what's also funny is that we have almost every attribute in the graveyard except for light, so we still get nibbed here. We still died to Nibiru, which is funny. And here's the Undyne. Oh, the brick. Okay, there we go. Pop effect. Okay, this is stupid. I mean, look. To me, first of all, I want to say one thing. This off of one card is good, but you were playing a lot of cards for that, and I don't think all of them work as a 1-card starter. You started this combo with the level 1 Genex planner thingy. You could have started it with Genex Turbo, I'm pretty sure, because this adds a level 1 Genex, which you could have just added the power planner. I'm pretty sure that could have worked, potentially. Maybe you can also start it with this one. They all work except for the level 3. Okay, so Turbo works, Crusher works, and Power Planner works. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Prank Kids a little bit. It reminds me of Prank Kids, but with a more obvious choke point. Like this one, right? But your end board is a little bit more powerful than a standard Prank Kids end board. You play some more bricks than Prank Kids did, right? Like, Prank Kids played pretty much no bricks if you didn't want to, right? Like, here you have this dude which you don't want to draw. You have controller that you don't want to draw, so on and so forth. So, I don't know. I don't think this is super impressive. Even though it is funny that they have, like, 15 Stratoses and they just got a Link monster that lets them normal summon infinite times. But, yeah. You can play Regulus. You can play Regulus, but the thing about Regulus is it would probably be too late, right? Because in order to summon Regulus, you need a machine in the graveyard, and in order to get a machine in the graveyard, you're probably gonna have to link summon your controller. So if they just imperm it immediately, or imperm it in response to Regulus in hand, you're gonna lose to Droll and Lockbird as well. That is one other thing that Prank Kids didn't lose to, right? Prank Kids were okay against Droll and Lockbird. I mean, Droll and Lockbird hurt Prank Kids a little bit, but this deck is completely dead, right? So, I don't know. Its neat support, the Link one is, by no stretch of the imagination, this thing is a custom card. This card is a custom card. One other thing that's funny to note, it doesn't matter for us. It does not matter for us in the TCG, but in Master Duel and the OCG, the design of this normal summoning is interesting because of Maxi, right? It's like, it's an interesting design that I'm pretty sure they did this because of Maxi, right? It's kind of like, this thing is basically Genex Firewall Dragon, but it normal summons instead of special summons from hand. And that is probably partially also caused because of Maxi, right? They all trigger on normal summon as well only, right? Yeah. No, interesting cards. Honestly, if we got these cards right, I'm just thinking, if we got these cards in the TCG right now, might I show you this? I said one replay. Hold up. You put Forbidden Lance into this deck. All right. Okay, so the level 3 also works, right? Eagle Booster time? Well, okay, but if Eagle Booster would be the standard card in a deck like this, you just imperm the controller once one of these is on the board, right? You just imperm them one summon later. We still don't have a Nib Negate, by the way. There has to be a way to do this combo so that you have a Nib Negate. This is outrageous. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It is funny. Okay, so basically, the deck is going to be a billion Stratoses that are all one card combo into a board that looks somewhat like this one. Somewhat like this one. And then it's gonna have some bricks. And it's gonna have some non-engine. And that's the deck, right? That's Genex now. How does this play going second? We don't talk about that right now. Going second, your hand is just going to be 5 Stratoses. You're going to normal summon one. They're going to interrupt it. It's going to be gone, and you're going to lose the game. Right? We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. We let the people cope. We let the people cope. So according to my calculations, this deck is going to ruin the game, and every single turn 1 is going to take exactly 37 minutes. And that's all I have to say about that.